The Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Sunlight from Nexus Prime's twin stars poured through the transparent dome overhead, casting rainbow patterns across the seats where 47 species gathered to discuss the fate of the galaxy. The air hummed with translation devices, turning thousands of different sounds into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the central podium. She was a small woman by human standards, barely over 5 feet tall, with gray streaks running through her black hair. She had spent 30 years in diplomatic service. She had negotiated trade deals, prevented wars, and built friendships across dozens of worlds. Today, she stood alone before the assembly, with a data tablet in her hands and exhaustion in her eyes. "Honored members of the assembly," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she carried. "I come before you today, not with accusations, but with evidence. For the past 50 years, humanity has served this assembly with dedication. We have sent our doctors to plague worlds. We have sent our engineers to rebuild shattered stations. We have sent our soldiers to hold lines against threats that would consume us all." She activated her tablet. Holographic displays filled the air above the assembly floor. Numbers scrolled past. Images of human colony worlds appeared, their mineral deposits stripped bare. Video footage showed human trading ships being turned away from ports while other species were welcomed. Documents revealed human technology patents filed with the Assembly's trade office, only to appear months later as products from Kaithrak corporations with different names but identical specifications. "We have asked for nothing but equal treatment," Chen Wei continued. "We have followed every rule. We have paid every fee. We have honored every agreement. Yet at every turn, we are dismissed. Our colonies are exploited. Our traders are taxed at rates 3 times higher than any other species. Our innovations are stolen, without consequence." A massive Valorian counselor rose from his seat. His species had been part of the assembly for over 10,000 years. They were warriors, philosophers, and artists. They considered themselves the founders of galactic civilization. He looked down at Chen Wei with what might have been pity or contempt. It was hard to tell with Valorian facial features. "Ambassador Chen Wei," he rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. "Humanity has been part of this assembly for barely 3 centuries. 3 centuries. My family has records older than your species' space travel. You speak of unfair treatment, but perhaps you simply do not understand how things work. There is an order to the galaxy. Newcomers must earn their place." Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults might share at a child's innocent misunderstanding. Chen Wei's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "We have earned our place," she said quietly. "We have bled for it. 7,000 human soldiers died holding the line at Viridian Gap when the Scree swarms first emerged. We held for 3 weeks until Valorian reinforcements arrived. We earned our place then." A Kaithrak delegate clicked her mandibles in dismissal. The Kaithrak looked like enormous mantises, but with 6 legs and 4 arms. They controlled the largest trade networks in the galaxy. Yes, very heroic," she chittered. "But battle prowess does not equal economic sophistication. If your corporations cannot compete with established markets, perhaps they should innovate more effectively instead of crying theft." More laughter. Chen Wei looked around the chamber. She saw it in their faces, heard it in their voices. They were not evil beings. They were not monsters. They simply did not see humans as equals. Humanity was young, energetic, useful for labor and fighting, but not truly deserving of the same respect given to elder species. She tapped her tablet again. A new document appeared in the air. Humanity's petition for equal trade status. It was a simple request. The same tariff rates as other species. The same access to markets. The same legal protections for intellectual property. "I formally request that the Assembly vote on this petition," Chen Wei said. The Assembly Speaker, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, called for the vote. The process took less than 5 minutes. Species voted by color blue, for acceptance, red for denial. The chamber filled with red light. 43 species voted no. Only 2 voted yes, the small Perrin species, who humanity had saved from a plague 20 years ago, and the reclusive singers, who rarely voted at all. 1 species abstained. Chen Wei watched the lights. She had expected this outcome. She had told her government this would happen. But some part of her had hoped. Some small part of her had believed that evidence and reason would matter. The Valorian counselor who had spoken earlier stood again. Ambassador, please understand, this is not personal. In 10,000 years, perhaps 20,000 years, humanity will have matured enough for full partnership. For now, be content with what you have. Chen Wei looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked around the chamber at all the species gathered there. She thought about the human doctors working in alien hospitals for wages barely enough to survive. She thought about the human peacekeepers standing between warring factions on a dozen worlds. She thought about the human children on colony worlds who would grow up knowing the galaxy saw them as lesser. She closed her tablet with a soft click that somehow echoed in the vast chamber. I came here in good faith, she said. And her voice carried a different quality now. Not angry, not pleading, simply stating facts. Humanity sought partnership. We sought equality. We sought to build something together with you. We offered our strength, our innovation, our dedication. In return, you have given us contempt, dressed up as patience. She descended from the podium. Behind her, every human in the chamber stood, ambassadors from 17 different human worlds, staff members, military liaisons, cultural attachés. 127 people rose as one, their movements synchronized without any signal being given. We are leaving, Chen Wei said simply. The assembly speaker pulsed with confused light. Leaving the chamber? This session is not yet. Leaving the assembly, Chen Wei interrupted. Humanity hereby withdraws from all treaties, agreements, and obligations with this body. Effective immediately. Silence crashed across the chamber like a wave. Species looked at each other in confusion. Some laughed nervously. The Valorian counselor called out, Ambassador, surely you do not mean— I mean exactly what I said, Chen Wei replied. She walked toward the massive doors at the chamber's entrance, and every human followed her. Their footsteps rang out in perfect rhythm. You wanted us to understand our place. We understand now. Our place is not here. The human delegation reached the doors. Chen Wei paused and looked back one final time. An elderly Valorian in the upper seats caught her eye. Unlike the others, he was not laughing. He looked worried, even frightened. He leaned to an aide and whispered something urgently. Chen Wei turned away. The doors opened before her, and humanity walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall. Behind them, the doors closed with a sound like thunder. The species in the chamber sat in confused silence. Then someone laughed, and the tension broke. They returned to their normal business, discussing trade routes and border disputes. But in the upper seats, the elderly Valorian counselor did not laugh. He stared at the closed doors and remembered something he had read once in humanity's historical records. Something about a species that had fought itself for thousands of years, that had survived ice ages and plagues and countless disasters. A species that knew how to endure, how to adapt, and how to remember every slight against it. We have made a terrible mistake, he whispered. His aide looked confused. Sir, they are just one species. What can they possibly do? The old Valorian did not answer. He had read more of human history than most. He knew what one determined species could do. He knew what happened when you pushed persistence hunters too far. 2 hours later, The first emergency broadcasts began flooding galactic networks. Human colonies across 17 systems were recalling their citizens. Human ships were leaving alien ports. Their docking fees paid, but no explanations given. Human doctors were packing their equipment and boarding shuttles. Human traders were canceling contracts. Human peacekeepers were stepping away from their posts. And in the Viridian sector, where the Valorian Empire was fighting a renewed Scree swarm offensive, human tactical advisors disappeared overnight. By morning, the Valorian forces that had been winning began to lose ground. By afternoon, they were in full retreat. The galaxy did not tremble yet. But it would soon. 2 weeks had passed since humanity walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall. Commander Thelvar, of the Valorian Third Fleet, stood on the bridge of his warship and watched his battle plans fall apart. The tactical display showed red markers spreading across the screen like a disease. Each marker represented a Scree swarm ship, and there were thousands of them. "Pull back the left flank," he ordered. "Reinforce Sector 7. His crew moved to obey. But their movements were slower than usual. Hesitant. They knew what Thelvar knew. Without the human advisors, they were fighting blind. 3 months ago, a team of 12 human tactical specialists had been embedded with the Third Fleet. They were quiet people who watched the displays and occasionally made suggestions. Their advice always seemed simple, almost obvious. But it worked. Attack here instead of there. Retreat now instead of in 5 minutes. Send scouts to this asteroid field. The Valorians had tolerated the humans because the Assembly required it as part of the defense pacts. Some officers grumbled about needing help from such a young species. But the victories kept coming, so the humans stayed. Then, 2 weeks ago, the humans received a message. Thelvar had been standing nearby when the lead advisor, a woman named Sarah Martinez, read it on her datapad. Her face went blank. She stood, gathered her team, and they left within the hour. No explanation. No farewell. They simply walked to their shuttle and departed. Thelvar had been annoyed but not worried. How much difference could 12 advisors really make? Now he knew. His fleet was losing. The Scree swarms attacked with the same patterns they always had. But without the humans pointing out the weak points in those patterns, the Valorians could not exploit them. Ships that should have survived were destroyed. Ambushes that should have succeeded failed. In 2 weeks, Thelvar had lost more vessels than he had in the previous 6 months. Across the sector, the same story repeated. Every Valorian fleet that had relied on human tactical support was suddenly struggling. The war that had been turning in their favor was now spiraling toward disaster. On the other side of the galaxy, in the heart of the Kaithrak commercial zones, Governor Slikcha watched financial reports scroll across her screens and felt something she had never experienced before: fear. The Kaithrak Trade Federation controlled 30% of galactic commerce. Their economic models were the most sophisticated in known space, or so they had believed. Now, those models were breaking. 3 days ago, every artificial intelligence system built or maintained by human companies had shut down. Not crashed, not malfunctioned. Simply stopped working. Logistics networks that tracked billions of cargo containers went dark. Market prediction algorithms that forecast trade patterns fell silent. Communication relays that translated between dozens of species ceased translating. The Kaithrak had never realized how much of their infrastructure relied on human-built systems. The humans had always worked cheap, taking contracts other species considered beneath them, building the boring but essential systems that kept civilization running. Now, those systems were gone. Slikcha had tried to contact the human companies. She sent messages offering double pay, triple pay, whatever they wanted. None responded. She sent investigators to human space to find out what was happening. The investigators reached the border and were turned back by automated defense platforms. A simple message played on repeat. Human space is closed. Return to your territory. This is your only warning. The Kithrak economy was not collapsing yet, but cracks were appearing. Without the AI systems, shipping was delayed. Without accurate predictions, traders were making bad bets. Without efficient translation, deals were falling through. Every day, the cracks grew wider. In a medical station orbiting the world of Thessia Prime, Dr. Kelsoon watched his newest patient struggle to breathe and knew there was nothing he could do. The Thessian child had the wasting sickness, a genetic disorder that affected 3% of their population. 2 years ago, a human doctor named James Chen had developed a treatment. It was not a cure, but it kept the children alive, let them grow up and live normal lives. Dr. Chen had worked at this station for 18 months. He had treated over 300 children. He had trained Thessian doctors in his techniques. Then, 2 weeks ago, he left. Kelsoon had tried to continue the treatments using Chen's notes, but something was missing. Some understanding of the disease that Chen had never fully explained, or perhaps had tried to explain but Kelsoon had not fully grasped. The treatments were failing. Children were dying. It was the same story on 17 worlds. Human doctors who had worked for modest wages in places other species would not go, were now gone. They had saved billions of lives over 3 centuries. They had asked only for fair pay and basic respect. Now they were gone. And the plague worlds, the frontier colonies, the disaster zones, all these places were suffering. On Nexus Prime, in the Grand Assembly Hall where this had all begun, the delegates gathered in emergency session. The chamber buzzed with angry voices. Species blamed each other. Old rivalries surfaced without human mediators to smooth them over. The Vrokesh hegemony accused the Essence Collective of using the human departure as cover for territorial expansion. The Essence Collective responded that the Vrokesh had been planning invasion for years. Without human peacekeepers to verify claims and monitor borders, neither side could prove anything. Within days, they were shooting at each other. 3 other conflicts erupted across the galaxy. Not major wars, but the kind of border disputes and trade disagreements that humans had always helped resolve. Now, those disputes had no resolution, only escalation. The assembly speaker called for order, the crystalline being pulsed with agitated light. "We must contact humanity," it declared. "We must negotiate their return. Azuke. We must negotiate their return." The Valorian counselor who had dismissed Chen Wei 2 weeks ago stood. He looked older now, his confidence shaken. "I have tried. We have all tried. They do not answer our calls. I'm in another ham. Thanks for watching. I'm in another Ziston. And I'm in another self. I'm in another self. I'm in another self. I'm in another self." "Then we must send an official delegation," someone suggested. "I volunteer to lead it," the Kethrak governor said quickly. She needed those AI systems back online before her economy collapsed entirely. The delegation was assembled quickly. 20 representatives from the most powerful species, traveling aboard the fastest diplomatic vessel in the fleet. They entered human space and immediately received a message to stop. When they continued, defense platforms activated, not to fire, but to herd. The delegation found themselves pushed back toward the border by automated systems that responded to nothing they transmitted. Finally, a human voice came through their communications. It was calm, professional, and absolutely final. "You are not welcome in human space. Your diplomatic credentials are not recognized. Leave immediately, or we will remove you." The delegation tried to argue. They tried to explain the importance of their mission. The human voice cut them off. "You voted 43-3 to deny us basic rights. You laughed at our ambassador. You called us children who needed to earn our place. We heard you clearly. Now you hear us. Leave." The communication ended. The defense platforms moved closer. weapons powering up. The delegation left. Back at the assembly, emergency session followed emergency session. Some delegates were angry. How dare humanity shut them out? They demanded the assembly force humanity to honor its old agreements. Others pointed out that those agreements no longer existed. Humanity had withdrawn from all treaties. Legally, they owed the assembly nothing. Then we will make them comply, the Valorian counselor thundered. We will send a military fleet. We will do nothing. The old Valorian who had warned against insulting humanity said quietly. He had been silent for most of these sessions, but now he stood. Do any of you understand what you are suggesting? A military action against humanity? They are one species, someone scoffed. We are 46. They are one species that has been fighting itself for its entire existence, the old Valorian replied. One species that has survived extinction events, plagues, ice ages, and countless wars. One species that treats military service as an honor rather than a burden. Do you know how many humans serve in their military? 1% of their total population. That is over 300 million trained soldiers. How many soldiers do we have? All of us combined? Silence fell across the chamber. No one wanted to answer that question. The old Valorian continued. For 3 centuries, we had humanity's strength on our side. Their doctors, their engineers, their soldiers, their innovators, all working to make the galaxy better. And we paid them half what we pay others. We stole from them. We mocked them. And still they stayed. Because they believed in what the assembly represented. He looked around at the faces watching him. Now they are gone. And in 2 weeks, we are already falling apart. Wars are starting. Economies are failing. People are dying from diseases humanity had contained. And this is just the beginning. What do you suggest we do? The assembly speaker asked. Send someone to them, not a delegation of proud counselors demanding answers. We tried that. They turned away our delegation. We sent 20 representatives from powerful species, expecting to be welcomed. Try sending one person. Someone who will not make demands. The assembly debated for hours. Finally, they agreed. They would send one representative to humanity. Just one. As a show of good faith. And if they refuse even this? Someone asked. No one answered. Because they all knew what that would mean. It would mean humanity had no interest in returning. That the partnership was truly over. That the galaxy would have to face its problems without the species that had quietly been holding everything together. Far from the assembly, in the dark between stars, a Kethrak spy ship drifted silently near the edge of human space. The captain had orders to observe only. To see what humanity was doing. To understand what they were planning. The spy ship's sensors recorded everything. Thousands of ships in orbital dry docks around Earth and its colonies. Construction projects on a massive scale. New stations, new weapons platforms, new vessels of types the Kethrak had never seen before. And everywhere, fleets drilling in perfect formation, running combat exercises day and night. The captain watched for 3 days. Then, a human patrol found them. The Kethrak ship ran. They barely escaped into warp space before human intercept fighters caught them. The captain returned to Kethrak space with her data. She filed her report and then added her personal observation. They are not hiding, she wrote. They are not running away. They are building. They are training. They are preparing for something. I believe we have awoken something terrible. I believe we have reminded humanity that they were once a species of warriors before they ever went to space. And now, they remember what they are. The report circulated through the assembly in whispers. Some dismissed it as fear-mongering. Others read it and felt cold, despite the climate-controlled chambers. The galaxy was beginning to understand. Humanity had not left, because they were weak. They had left because they were strong enough to walk away. And now, in the silence that followed, everyone wondered the same question. What happened next? 4 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Grand Assembly. The galaxy was burning, and everyone was starting to understand what they had lost. The war between the Essence Collective and the Vrokesh hegemony had exploded into a full-scale conflict. What started as a border dispute over 3 star systems now threatened to consume both civilizations. The Essence Collective were beings of living energy, beautiful and ancient. The Vrokesh were silicon-based warriors, powerful and proud. Both species had existed for thousands of years. Both were now fighting for survival. On the collective's homeworld of Lumina, Elder Essence Vartha watched her people evacuate the crystal cities. Vrokesh warships bombarded the surface from orbit, and there was no one to stop them. No human peacekeepers to stand between the combatants. No human negotiators to find common ground. Just endless violence. Vartha remembered the human peacekeeping team that had been stationed on the border between her people and the Vrokesh, a small group of 20 soldiers led by a man named David Okoye. They had maintained peace for 12 years. Whenever tensions rose, Okoye and his team would investigate, gather evidence, and present the truth to both sides. Both the Essence Collective and the Vrokesh had respected the humans' fairness, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Then the humans left. Within a week, the Vrokesh claimed the Essence Collective was building weapon platforms in the disputed zone. The collective denied it. Without humans to verify the truth, accusations turned into threats, threats into skirmishes, skirmishes into war. Now Vartha's civilization was dying. She had tried to contact David Okoye, offering him anything he wanted to return. Money, land, titles, whatever humanity desired. The message came back undelivered. Human space remained closed. In the Valorian Empire, things were even worse. Commander Thelvar's Third Fleet no longer existed. The Scree swarms had overwhelmed it 3 weeks ago. Thelvar himself had escaped in a damaged cruiser, but 8,000 Valorian warriors had died. The swarms pushed deeper into Valorian territory every day. The Empire called up reserve fleets. They tried new strategies. Nothing worked. The swarms adapted to everything the Valorians threw at them. Without human tactical advisors to point out patterns and suggest unexpected approaches, the proud warrior species found themselves losing a war they had been winning. The Valorian High Command met in their war room beneath the capital city. Generals and admirals argued about strategy, while holographic displays showed red markers advancing across the map. "We need the humans back," one general said bluntly. "Pride does not matter anymore. Our species is facing extinction. We cannot force them to return," another responded. "They have made their position clear." "Then we beg," the first general said. "We offer them whatever they want. And what if they say no?" The room fell silent, because that was the terrifying possibility that hung over everything. What if humanity simply did not care? What if they had decided the galaxy was not worth saving? On the Kthrak trading worlds, the economy continued its slow collapse. Governor Slikcha had tried everything. She hired the best non-human programmers to restart the AI systems. None could do it. The systems were not just shut down, they were locked with encryption that even the Kthrak could not break. Human-built systems remained loyal to their creators, it seemed. Trade routes that had operated for centuries were now chaotic. Ships arrived at wrong destinations. Cargo containers were lost. Communication breakdowns led to misunderstandings, which led to conflicts. 3 Kthrak merchant fleets had been destroyed in disputes over docking rights. The Trade Federation was tearing itself apart. Slikcha stood in her office overlooking the main trading hub and watched fights break out on the docking platforms. Species that had traded peacefully for generations now argued over every transaction without human-built systems to ensure fairness. She had authorized 20 different attempts to contact humanity. All failed. Human space remained closed to everyone. No messages answered. No ships allowed entry. No negotiations possible. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. On 17 worlds, plague sickness spread because human doctors were gone. On 40 space stations, life support systems failed because human engineers were not there to maintain them. On 100 frontier colonies, people went hungry because human logistics experts were not coordinating supply shipments. The parent species, who had voted to support humanity's petition, tried to contact their human friends. They received one response. "Thank you for your support. We remember. When this is over, we will remember who stood with us." We, Krepting. That message gave the parent hope. It also terrified them. When what was over? What was humanity planning? The Grand Assembly met again. This time, there was no laughter, no dismissive comments about young species. The chamber felt empty, despite being full of delegates. Everyone understood now what had been lost. Ambassador Chen Wei had warned them. She had shown them the evidence of humanity's contributions. They had not listened. Now they were paying the price. "We must send another delegation," the assembly speaker announced. "We must convince humanity to return." "We tried that," the Kathrak representative said tiredly. "They turned us away." Ender. Then, the old Valorian counselor, who had warned against insulting humanity, stood. He looked older now, worn down by the weight of being right. "We sent proud delegates making demands. We need to send someone humble, someone who understands what we have done." "What have we done?" a younger delegate asked, confused. "We simply voted on a trade petition. We have the right to..." We destroyed a partnership," the old Valorian interrupted. "For 300 years, humanity came to us, offering cooperation. They brought their strength, their innovation, their compassion. They asked only for equal treatment. We gave them scraps and told them to be grateful. We called them children. We laughed at them. We stole from them. And when they asked us to stop, we voted 43-3. He looked around the chamber. "Now we are learning what the galaxy looks like without them. Wars spreading, economies failing, diseases returning. And this is just 4 months. What will the galaxy look like in a year? In 10 years? Surely humanity will not let civilization collapse." Someone protested. "They are not cruel. They will come back." "Why should they?" the old Valorian asked. "What loyalty do they owe us?" We showed them none. The assembly debated for days. Finally, they reached a decision. They would send one person to humanity. Not a powerful ambassador. Not a fleet of diplomats. One person who could speak honestly about what the assembly had done wrong. They chose carefully. After much discussion, they selected a young human named Lieutenant Marcus Rivera. He was not an ambassador. He was not a diplomat. He was a junior military officer who had served on human ships during the Scree Swarm conflicts. But he was the one person the assembly thought humanity might actually speak to. Wait, no. The assembly could not send a human to represent them. Humanity had withdrawn. They needed to send someone from their own species. They selected Elder Essence Vartha. She was respected, wise, and her people were currently dying in a war that human absence had allowed. She understood the cost of what had happened. But when Vartha volunteered, the assembly received a message from humanity. It was the first communication in 4 months. "The Galactic Assembly may send one observer to our space. Only one. This observer may attend our response council. This observer has no vote and no voice. This is not a negotiation. Accept or decline." The message was signed by Ambassador Chen Wei. The assembly debated briefly. An observer with no voice, no vote? It was an insult. But it was also the first crack in humanity's silence. They accepted. Who should we send? The speaker asked. Every species looked at each other. No one wanted to volunteer. Finally, a junior Valorian officer stood. His name was Sub-Commander Kelmark. He was young, barely 20 cycles old. He had fought alongside humans at Viridian Gap and respected them. He had also been outspoken in his criticism of how the Assembly treated humanity. I will go, Kelmark said. I have no illusions about what we did wrong. Perhaps that honesty is what they want. The Assembly agreed. Kelmark was given diplomatic credentials and sent to the border of human space in a small, unarmed shuttle. He waited there for 3 days before a human patrol ship arrived. Sub-Commander Kelmark? A human voice asked over the communications channel. Yes, I am here to observe, as permitted. Follow us. Do not deviate from the flight path. Do not scan our systems. Do not record our installations. If you do any of these things, you will be escorted back to the border. Understood? Understood. The human ship led him deep into human space. Kelmark followed the rules precisely, keeping his sensors passive and his recording equipment off. But he could not help seeing what surrounded him. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships. Warships of designs he had never seen. Carriers that dwarfed anything the Valorian Empire had built. Weapons platforms surrounding every planet. And on every vessel, human crews training constantly. They were not just building. They were preparing for war. But war with whom? Kelmark was brought to Earth, to the human homeworld. He had never been there before. Few non-humans had. It was a beautiful world, blue and green and white, with oceans that covered most of its surface. He was taken to a building in a city called Geneva. Inside, and at the head of the table sat Ambassador Chen Wei. She looked at Kelmark with eyes that held no anger, no hate, but also no warmth. Sub-Commander Kelmark, she said, you are here to observe, so observe. She activated a display. Images filled the air. Battle plans. Fleet movements. Strategic assessments. And at the center of everything, a map showing the Scree Swarm territory expanding like a cancer across the galaxy. The swarms are winning, Chen Wei said simply. Without human tactical support, your species is losing. The war will be over in 6 months. The Scree will consume the Valorian Empire, then move on to the next target. Eventually, they will threaten Earth. She looked at Kelmark. Kelmark stared at the display. The Assembly would welcome your return. We would accept any terms. You will accept our terms, Chen Wei interrupted. Not negotiate them. Accept them. Do you understand the difference? Kelmark nodded slowly. Then listen carefully, Sub-Commander. Take notes. Because what I am about to tell you will determine whether the Galactic Assembly survives or falls into chaos. Sub-Commander Kelmark sat in the observation room in Geneva and listened to Ambassador Chen Wei outline humanity's terms. The list was long and detailed. Each point struck like a hammer blow against everything the Galactic Assembly had built over thousands of years. First, Chen Wei said, her voice calm and professional. Humanity will receive full voting rights equal to any founding species. Our vote will carry the same weight as the Valorians, the Kuthrak, or the Essence Collective. Kelmark wrote this down. Around the room, other humans watched him. Military officers, government officials, scientists. They all wore the same expression, not angry, not triumphant, just tired. These were people who had been patient for 3 centuries and were done being patient. Second, Chen Wei continued, all trade agreements will be renegotiated to provide equal tariff rates and market access. No species will receive preferential treatment based on age or historical status. Third, every human patent, design, and innovation stolen over the past 300 years will be compensated at current market value. This amounts to approximately 47 trillion credits by our calculations. Kelmark's hand shook as he wrote that number. It was enough to bankrupt smaller species entirely. Fourth, humanity will hold permanent seats on all major councils: military, economic, medical, and scientific. Our representatives will have full authority to participate in all decisions. Fifth, any species that votes against these terms will be barred from receiving human aid, trade, or military support for a period of 50 standard years. Chen Wei paused, letting that sink in. These terms are not negotiable. The Assembly will vote on them as a complete package. Accept or reject. There will be no amendments, no compromises, no discussions about maybe doing some of this, and not the rest. She looked at Kelmark directly. Do you understand what I am telling you, Sub-Commander? Kelmark nodded slowly. You are saying the Assembly must give humanity more power than any single species has ever held, or you will let us fall. Ah! No, Chen Wei corrected him. We are saying the Assembly must treat humanity as an equal partner, or we will let you face your problems alone. There is a difference. We are not asking to rule the galaxy. We are demanding the respect we should have been given from the beginning. She stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. For 300 years, we saved your people. We fought your wars. We cured your diseases. We built your infrastructure. We asked for nothing but fair treatment. You laughed at us. She turned back to face him. Now the galaxy is burning. The scree swarms are winning. Wars are spreading. Economies are collapsing. And you come to us asking for help. Why should we help you? Kelmark struggled to find an answer. Finally, he said quietly, because you are better than we are. Chen Wei's expression softened slightly. We are not better. We are just tired of being treated as lesser. These terms ensure that never happens again. Many species will oppose this, Kelmark warned. The elder races have held power for thousands of years. They will not surrender it easily. Then they will learn to adapt, Chen Wei said. Or they will fall. Evolution does not care about pride, Sub-Commander. It only cares about survival. Species that cannot adapt go extinct. She handed him a data crystal. This contains the complete terms, along with supporting documentation. Take it to the Assembly, present it to them, and make sure they understand something very clearly. What is that? This is not humanity making threats. This is humanity offering partnership. Real partnership, where we are treated as equals. If they reject this, we will not destroy them. We will simply walk away and let the galaxy sort itself out. When the scree swarms reach their worlds, we will defend Earth and our colonies. Everyone else can fend for themselves. Kelmark felt cold. You would really do that? Watch civilizations fall? We watched our own civilization nearly fall countless times before we ever went to space. Chen Wei replied. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. We survived them all. We know how to endure. The question is, can your civilizations survive without us? She walked to the door. You have 7 days to return to the Assembly, present these terms, and bring back their answer. After 7 days, this offer expires. Then we focus entirely on preparing for the swarms to reach our borders. Nothing else will matter to us. Kelmark stood. Ambassador, I fought alongside humans at Viridian Gap. I know your worth. I will do everything I can to convince the Assembly to accept these terms. I know you will, Sub-Commander. That is why we allowed you to come. She paused. Tell me something honestly. If you were in the Assembly chamber when the vote was held on our petition, what would you have voted? Kelmark did not hesitate. I would have voted yes. What the Assembly did was wrong. Chen Wei nodded. Then perhaps there is hope. Go. Make them understand. The human patrol ship took Kelmark back to the border. During the journey, he reviewed the data crystal Chen Wei had given him. The terms were harsh, but not unreasonable. Everything humanity asked for was what they should have had from the beginning: equal votes, fair trade, recognition of their contributions. But the elder species would hate it. They had controlled the assembly for thousands of years. They saw themselves as the guardians of galactic civilization. Accepting that a species barely 3 centuries old deserved equal power would shatter their worldview. Kelmark arrived at Nexus Prime and immediately requested an emergency assembly session. Every delegate attended. The chamber buzzed with desperate hope. Finally, news from humanity. Finally, a chance to fix this disaster. Kelmark stood at the central podium where Chen Wei had stood 6 months ago. He looked around at the faces watching him. Some desperate, some proud, some afraid. "I bring humanity's terms," he announced. "Listen carefully. Your future depends on your answer." He presented the 5 points. As he spoke, reactions rippled through the chamber. Shock, anger, fear. By the time he finished, species were shouting at each other. "This is extortion," a Kaithrak delegate screamed. "They cannot demand this much." "They can," Kelmark replied quietly, "because we need them more than they need us. We are the elder species." A Valorian general thundered. "We have ruled this galaxy for thousands of years. We will not surrender power to children." "Then you will die," Kelmark said flatly. "The scree swarms will consume your empire in less than 6 months. I have seen humanity's battle plans. They can stop the swarms. Without them, you cannot." The Essence Collective representative flickered with agitated energy. "My people are dying in a war that human absence allowed. Ask them to return now. To stop the killing. We can negotiate terms later." Then reader, onder. "No," Kelmark said. "The terms are non-negotiable. Accept or reject as a complete package. That is what Ambassador Chen Wei told me." "And if we reject?" someone asked. "Then humanity defends itself and lets the rest of us fall." Kelmark looked around the chamber. "They have the resources to survive alone. Do we?" Silence fell, because everyone knew the answer. The galaxy had relied on humanity for 3 centuries. Medical care, technological innovation, military expertise, economic stability. So much of it had come from humans working quietly in the background. Now, they were gone, and everything was falling apart. The old Valorian counselor who had warned against insulting humanity spoke. His voice was tired but firm. "We should accept their terms." "What?" Several delegates turned to stare at him. "Think about what they are asking for," the old Valorian continued. "Equal votes, fair trade, compensation for theft, seats on councils. These are not the demands of conquerors. These are the requests they made 6 months ago. The requests we denied. But the power they would have," someone protested. "They would have influence equal to ours," the old Valorian interrupted. "Not more. Equal. We are afraid because we have spent thousands of years controlling the galaxy and cannot imagine sharing that control. But humanity has been sharing for 3 centuries. They know how to work with others. They proved that every day before we drove them away." He stood slowly, his old body struggling with the weight. "I have studied human history. I have read about their wars, their struggles, their achievements. They are a species that knows both how to fight and how to cooperate. They could have demanded control of the assembly. They could have threatened military action. Instead, they are offering partnership. They are forcing us," someone started. "They are offering us survival," the old Valorian corrected, "with conditions that ensure they are never disrespected again. That is not unreasonable. That is wisdom learned from our mistakes." The chamber erupted in arguments. Species that relied heavily on human aid wanted to accept immediately. Species that valued their traditional power wanted to reject out of pride. Species that were neutral tried to find middle ground that did not exist. The debate lasted for hours. Kelmark stood at the podium and watched, saying nothing more. He had delivered the message. Now, they had to decide. Finally, the assembly speaker called for order. We will vote tomorrow. Every species must decide where they stand. But remember, this humanity gave us 7 days to answer. We have used one already. 6 days remain. The session ended. Delegates returned to their quarters to consult with their governments. Kelmark went to a communication station and sent a message to his commander in the Valorian Empire. Tell the High Command to prepare for acceptance, he wrote. We have no choice. Without humanity, we are finished. That night, across the galaxy, leaders debated. Some species accepted quickly. The Perrin, who had supported humanity before, voted yes within hours. The Singers, who rarely cared about politics, also agreed. The Kethrak struggled. Their economy was in ruins, and they needed human expertise desperately. But 47 trillion credits in compensation? It would take generations to pay. Their council argued through the night before finally deciding. They would vote yes. They had no choice. The Essence Collective, dying in their war with the Vrokesh, voted yes without hesitation. They needed human peacekeepers immediately. The Valorian Empire was split. The military wanted to accept they needed human tactical support, or they would lose to the swarms. But the civilian government resisted. Accepting would mean admitting they had been wrong, admitting that humans were their equals. Pride fought against survival for 3 days before survival won. But not every species agreed. The Vrokesh hegemony, currently winning their war, voted no. They saw no reason to give power to a species that had abandoned the galaxy. Several smaller species followed their lead, either from pride or from alliances. 6 days passed. The assembly gathered again. The chamber felt different now. Quieter, more serious. This was not a routine vote about trade routes or border disputes. This was a vote that would determine whether galactic civilization survived or fell apart. The assembly speaker's crystalline form pulsed. We vote now. Blue for acceptance. Red for rejection. The lights began to appear. Blue. 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 Red. Blue. Blue. Red. Blue. Kelmark watched the colors and counted. He needed at least 35 species to vote yes. Humanity had set no specific threshold, but anything less than a clear majority would look like the same disrespect as before. The voting finished. The chamber fell silent as the count appeared. 41 blue lights, 5 red lights. 1 abstention, the Kethrak, who accepted the terms but abstained on the compensation amount, requesting negotiation on payment schedules. 41-5. It was enough. The assembly speaker announced the result. The Galactic Assembly accepts humanity's terms by a vote of 41-5. With 1 abstention on payment details. Cheers erupted from some species. Others sat in silent acceptance. The 5 who voted no watched warily, knowing they had just isolated themselves. Kelmark sent the result to Earth immediately. 2 hours later, a response came. It was brief and professional. Received. Humanity accepts the Assembly's acceptance. Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo will arrive at the front lines in 48 hours. Ambassador Chen Wei will return to the Assembly in 1 week to negotiate implementation details. The message ended with one more line that sent chills through everyone who read it. Get out of our way. We have a swarm to kill. Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the UHNS Indomitable and watched the Scree swarm territory through the tactical display. The swarm stretched across 17 systems now, consuming everything in its path. Billions of beings had died. Hundreds of worlds had fallen. The Valorian Empire was weeks away from complete collapse. She had fought the swarms before, years ago, when they first emerged. Back then, humanity had been part of the assembly, working alongside other species. They had contained the threat together. Now she was back. But everything had changed. "Status report," she ordered. Her tactical officer responded immediately. "Human fleet is in position. 12 carrier groups, 400 destroyers, 200 frigates, support vessels numbering in the thousands. All ships report ready. Allied forces? The Valorian remnant fleet is holding position at the rally point. They have 80 warships remaining from their original 400. They are waiting for our orders." Okonkwo nodded. The proud Valorians, warriors for 10,000 years, were now waiting for orders from humans. 6 months ago, they had laughed at humanity. Now, they waited for humanity to save them. "Contact Admiral Thelvar," she commanded. The Valorian commander's face appeared on screen. He looked exhausted. His ship had been in continuous combat for weeks. "Admiral Okonkwo," he said, and she heard respect in his voice. Real respect, not the polite tolerance from before. "My fleet is yours to command." "We attack in 2 hours," Okonkwo replied. "Your forces will take the left flank. Focus on drawing swarm attention while my carriers move into position. Can you do that?" Thelvar straightened. "We are Valorian. We do not run from battle." "Good. But remember, this is not about pride anymore. This is about survival. If I order a retreat, you retreat. No heroic last stands. No glorious deaths. We need every ship to survive because this war is far from over. Understood?" Thelvar hesitated, then nodded. "Understood, Admiral. We will follow your orders." The connection ended. Okonkwo turned to her command staff. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have fought the swarms before. We know their patterns. We know their weaknesses. But they have grown stronger since we left. This will not be easy." She pulled up the battle plan. "The swarms rely on overwhelming numbers. They think like a hive, reacting to threats with brute force, so we will not fight them head-on. We will cut them apart piece by piece." Her officers studied the plan. It was complex, involving multiple feints, ambushes, and careful timing. The kind of strategy that required perfect coordination between thousands of ships. "Questions?" Okonkwo asked. "Will the Valorians be able to keep up?" someone asked. "No disrespect, but they have been losing for months." "They lost because they had no tactical guidance," Okonkwo replied. "With proper coordination, they are still excellent warriors. We will give them tasks they can accomplish, and we will support them when they need it." She looked around at her crew. They were ready. They had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, drilling and training while the galaxy fell apart. Now they would show everyone what humanity could do when they stopped holding back. "All ships," she announced on the fleet channel. "This is Admiral Okonkwo. We are going to war. Not for glory. Not for revenge. Not even for the assembly that scorned us. We fight because the swarms are a threat to all life, including our own. We fight because it is necessary. We, A.T. She paused. "But know this, the galaxy will watch what we do here. They will see that humanity keeps its word. We said we would stop the swarms, so we will stop them. When this is done, no one will ever question our place among the stars again." The fleet moved out. Thousands of ships sliding through space in perfect formation. The Valorian fleet joined them, their movements less precise but determined. They hit the Scree swarm at its weakest point, a tendril of ships extending toward another Valorian system. Okonkwo did not announce her attack. She simply struck, fast and hard. Human carriers launched fighter wings by the hundreds. Small, agile craft that swarmed over scree vessels like insects. Missiles and energy weapons tore into swarm ships, targeting joints and power systems that human tactical analysis had identified as vulnerable. The swarms reacted immediately, pulling ships from other areas to reinforce. That was when the Valorians struck the left flank, drawing away more forces. The swarm split its attention, trying to respond to threats from multiple directions. Now, Okonkwo ordered. Her heavy carriers moved forward, weapons blazing. Their massive guns could crack swarm vessels in half. They punched through the swarm line and emerged on the other side, having cut off a section of the enemy fleet. The isolated swarm ships tried to retreat. Human destroyers were waiting. In 20 minutes, 300 swarm vessels were destroyed. The human fleet lost only 12 ships. "Reform and move to position 2, Okonkwo commanded. The fleet shifted. Again they struck, this time hitting a swarm supply line. Again they won. Again they moved before the swarm could mass forces to respond. This was not the kind of war the Valorians were used to. They preferred grand battles, fleets smashing together in glorious combat. But Okonkwo was teaching them a different way. Strike fast, strike hard, and move before the enemy could strike back. Cut them apart, piece by piece. Over the next 3 weeks, the pattern repeated. Human forces would identify a weak point, attack with overwhelming force, destroy the target, and withdraw before reinforcements arrived. The swarms tried to adapt, but human tactics adapted faster. On the bridge of his damaged cruiser, Commander Thelvar watched in amazement. His people had been fighting the swarms for months and losing. The humans had been fighting for 3 weeks and winning. The difference was not in ships or weapons. It was in thinking. "They fight like they are hunting," his tactical officer observed. Patient, precise, always watching for opportunity. Thelvar nodded. He remembered something Ambassador Chen Wei had said in the assembly months ago. Something about humanity being persistence hunters, species that did not give up, that tracked prey for days or weeks until it exhausted itself. That was what he was watching now. The swarms were powerful, but they fought by instinct. Humans fought with thought. They planned. They adapted. They learned from every engagement. "We have much to learn from them," Thelvar said quietly. But the war was not without cost. In the 4th week, a swarm ambush caught a human destroyer squadron. 6 ships were destroyed before reinforcements arrived. 2,000 humans died. Okonkwo attended the memorial service via video link. She watched as the names of the dead were read aloud. She saw families weeping for lost loved ones, and she felt the weight of command. The knowledge that her decisions had put those people in harm's way. After the service, her second-in-command approached her. "Admiral, the Valorian High Command is requesting another major push. They want to retake their core systems. Tell them we are not ready," Okonkwo replied. "We have hurt the swarms, but not broken them. If we push too fast, we will lose everything we have gained. They are impatient. Then they can be impatient. I will not throw away human lives to satisfy Valorian pride." The message was sent. The Valorians accepted her decision without argument. That was new too. Before the walkout, they would have debated, argued, maybe even gone ahead without human support. Now they waited for human tactical expertise. In the 6th week, Okonkwo judged the time was right. The swarms were weakened, their formations disrupted, their supply lines cut. She gathered her fleet and the Valorian forces for a major assault. "This is it," she told her commanders. "We are going to punch through to the swarm core systems. This will be the hardest fight yet. They will throw everything at us." "Can we win?" someone asked. "Yes, but it will cost us." The attack began at dawn, Ship time. The combined human-Valorian fleet struck deep into swarm territory. This time, the swarms were ready. They had pulled back their scattered forces and concentrated them for defense. The battle that followed was brutal. Ships burned. People died. The space around the swarm core world lit up with weapons, fire, and explosions. Human carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. Valorian heavy cruisers hammered swarm positions with their main guns. For 12 hours, the battle raged. Okonkwo directed the fleet with calm precision, shifting forces to counter swarm responses. But even her tactical skill could not prevent losses. Ships were destroyed. Thousands died on both sides. In the end, human persistence won. The swarms fought by instinct, throwing wave after wave at the attackers. Humans fought by thinking, adapting to each wave, finding weaknesses, and exploiting them. The swarm core world fell. The surviving swarm ships scattered, fleeing into deep space. The immediate threat was broken, but the victory was bitter. Okonkwo stood on her bridge and looked at the casualty reports. 7,000 humans dead, 23 ships destroyed, hundreds more damaged. The Valorians had lost even more 30 ships, 12,000 warriors. Send a message to all hands, Okonkwo ordered quietly. The swarm threat has been pushed back beyond the galactic rim. The war is over. We have won. Cheers erupted across the fleet. But on the Indomitable's bridge, the celebration was muted. Victory, yes, but at such cost. 3 days later, the fleet returned to assembly space. They did not parade through systems in triumph. They simply came home, tired and mourning their losses. At Nexus Prime, the Grand Assembly gathered to welcome them. Ambassador Chen Wei arrived to represent humanity. She walked through the same doors she had walked out of 7 months ago. The chamber was different now. Humanity's banner hung among the founding species. The human delegation sat in seats equal to any other. When Chen Wei took the podium, everyone listened. The Scree swarm threat has been contained, she announced. For now. But make no mistake, they will return someday. When they do, we will need to face them together. An elderly Valorian approached her after the session. She recognized him, the one who had warned against insulting humanity. Thank you, he said simply. You saved us. Chen Wei looked at him. We did not do this for gratitude. We did this because it was necessary. Because the swarms threaten all life, including human life. Still, you could have let us fall. After what we did to you. Yes, we could have, Chen Wei interrupted. But that is not who we are. We did not come to the stars to watch civilizations burn. We came to build something better. Chen Wei, we came to build something better. She paused. But never mistake our willingness to help for weakness. We proved we can walk away. We proved we can survive alone. We proved we can win wars that you were losing. And we will remember both those who stood with us and those who stood against us. The old Valorian nodded. We will remember too. We will remember what our arrogance cost us. And we will remember who saved us when we had no right to expect salvation. The assembly session that followed was different from anything in its 10,000-year history. For the first time, species did not argue about who deserved more power or influence. They simply worked together, guided by hard lessons learned at terrible cost. Humanity took its place as an equal partner. Not rulers, not conquerors. Simply equals. And the galaxy was better for it. In the memorial gardens on Earth, new walls were built. On them were carved the names of 7,000 people who had died pushing back the swarms. Families came to remember. Children asked questions about parents they would never know. Ambassador Chen Wei stood before the memorial wall and read the names. She had known some of them. tactical officers who had analyzed swarm patterns, fighter pilots who had flown into impossible situations, engineers who had kept damaged ships flying. "We paid a heavy price," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Fleet Admiral Okonkwo. The admiral looked tired, aged by the weight of command. "Yes," Chenwei agreed. "But we proved something important. We proved that humanity's place among the stars was earned, not given. No one will ever question that again." "Ah, was it worth it?" Okonkwo asked. 7,000 lives? Chenwei was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I do not know if it was worth it, but I know it was necessary, and I know those 7,000 died so that the next generation of humans will be treated with respect." She looked back at the names on the wall. "That is what we fought for. Not power, not revenge, just respect, just the right to be treated as equals. And now we have it." High above Earth, in the assembly hall on Nexus Prime, species from across the galaxy continued their work, building peace, maintaining trade, preparing for future threats. And at every table, in every council, in every decision, humans sat as equals. The galaxy had trembled when humans walked out. Now it stood stronger, because humans had walked back in, not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as partners who had proven their worth. And in the cold reaches of space beyond the galactic rim, the scree swarms regrouped and waited. They would return, someday. But when they did, they would face a united galaxy. A galaxy that had learned the hard way that survival required cooperation, respect, and the willingness to learn from mistakes. A galaxy that had learned what humans had tried to teach them from the beginning. True strength lies not in the ability to wage war, but in the wisdom to choose peace. And when war becomes necessary, in the courage to fight not for glory, but for survival. The galaxy had trembled in fear when humans walked out. Now it stood in respect as humans walked beside them, equals at last.